Just a few months have passed since I'm writing this. I have a nighttime job in a warehouse. I typically sleep at home throughout the day and wake up between 6 and roughly 9 p.m. or 10 a.m. Even on my days off, since I prefer to maintain a consistent schedule for my body. I worked till 4 in the morning this evening. I immediately went home after getting off, arriving at around 4:15. Every route was silent and deserted. Nevertheless, a car was parked just next to my driveway when I arrived at my house. I turned in to have a better look at it and slowed down as I passed it. It was an ancient black car with windows substantially veiled. All of its lights were off and I was unable to see through any of them. After parking in my garage and taking one more glance down the driveway, I went inside. Given the layout of this neighborhood, there was a significant amount of the distance between each house. Therefore, parking close to the house you're visiting or whatever was often quite simple. There were plenty of available spots along the road, so it didn't seem necessary to park close to my house. At first, I wrote it off as someone came to see my neighbors. Perhaps all the spots on the road near their home were reserved in advance for a party or something. About an hour later that morning, I looked out the windows once more and the automobile was gone. The remainder of as usual that day passed. I got ready for another night at work after sleeping until 6 o'clock. The automobile wasn't there as I pulled out of the driveway to get to work, so I didn't really need to think about it anymore. I completed my work night, which was a little more exhausting than normal, but I was excited for tomorrow's night off. After a long shift, I eventually got out and headed home. Once more, no cars were out in the middle of the night. However, the same old automobile was there when I arrived home, parked where it was last night. I passed it slowly and tried to peer through the windows just like I had done previously, but nothing changed. This time I parked in the garage and went to the end of the driveway to take a better look. While I was strolling there, I believed I saw behind the tinted window. Something moved inside the vehicle. I couldn't be certain because I only caught a glimpse out of the corner of my eye. I suppose it might have just been a reflection on the window's exterior. I was uncomfortable approaching the car, so I moved up maybe 10 feet away, right up to it, particularly if someone was inside. I was unable to notice anything else even then. I thought I would never really need it, but before I left, I made the decision to take a picture of their license plate in case this started to happen again. Better be cautious, but I'm more sorry than sorry. I returned inside. The car was gone when I checked again later, just like yesterday night. It was really weird, but I didn't believe there was much more I could do about it because it wasn't really hurting me. I cooked dinner and spent some time watching TV hours, went to bed and slept until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. When I woke up, the sun had already set. I took my customary long walk around the neighborhood since I had the night off. The car wasn't there when I left the house, however. It was unexpectedly parked in the same location as the previous 2 evenings when I returned from my hour-long walk. Why was this automobile always in front of my house and just at night, although I could have seen 1 or 2 other cars parked on the street throughout my walk around the entire neighborhood? I approached. I went straight up to the glass this time, pressing my hand against the window and over my eyes to block out the reflection so I could see inside. There was nothing in the automobile. There were no humans, and there wasn't really anything to tell me why they were here. They weren't hurting me in any way, but it was one of those strange circumstances. Therefore, the solution was not straightforward. I returned to the house. I started by reaching for my phone, which I had left charging on my nightstand while out on a stroll. However, I saw an odd notification when I picked it up. One of my security cameras sent out a motion detection alert. For example, I had a camera on my front porch, but it just faced the door, so unless someone was standing right outside the door, it never went off. Additionally, I had 3 cameras in each of the main rooms in my house. I accessed the app and verified because the message did not indicate which camera sensed activity. The software had saved a 60-second recording. The house was utterly silent the entire time I watched it, and nothing moved. I was beginning to suspect that the system had entered this incorrectly. However, in the final 5 seconds of the film, something abruptly and quickly moved past the camera's bottom. They were only briefly seen in the picture. Only a portion of their shoulders and head were captured in a split second. As I clutched the phone, I experienced numbness in my hands. I was standing in the bedroom where the video was taken. All of a sudden, the house was completely silent. As I slowly turned around, I could actually hear my heart pounding. I began scanning the room with my eyes. They might be anywhere, even observing me at the moment. I became even more anxious as a result of all the ideas racing through my head. I quickly made my way to the doorway and left the room after realizing I had to go. I immediately heard activity coming from the bedroom directly behind me. Additionally, footsteps were racing down the hallway by the time I reached the stairs. I think they were only 15 feet behind me. I ran straight into the woods after arriving at the front door. In the severity of I didn't even look back to see who was pursuing me at that precise time. Getting out of there alive was more important to me. After a while, the only sound in the woods was my footsteps crunching on the leaves. I dialed 911. The car was gone when they got there, but fortunately I had a photo of their license plate from the previous day. They were located and taken into custody in about 3 hours. The man appeared to be totally insane and was in his mid-20s. To be honest, if I had turned around and witnessed him pursuing me into my home, I probably would have been so scared that I might have fallen or something. It was very clear that the person was targeting me, even though he didn't seem to have a good purpose for doing so. His phone included several photos of my house, some of which showed me sitting in my living room at night through the windows. For the past 2 weeks, he also kept track of my daily departure and arrival times from work. Unsettlingly, we still don't know how he got around the cameras and into my house. Furthermore, it is impossible to determine whether this was the first time he had broken in if he managed to enter covertly. Given how long and focused he was, he might have known the locations of all the cameras if he was tracking me. It's also possible that he made the error of walking slightly in front of one of the cameras in my bedroom for the first time. In any case, I shouldn't have to worry about him for a very long time. Even though this was 4 years ago, I still occasionally find myself thinking about it. This evening there was a lot of storming. I was an Uber driver, so it frequently slows down on evenings like this. I occasionally don't receive a single pickup. In any case, I waited outside every time, either sitting in a vacant parking lot and observing or driving while listening to music. I have YouTube on my phone. Even if I only received a few pickups, the additional money that I would not have otherwise earned is still worthwhile. Everything went as planned this evening. With a storm like this, nobody was going anywhere. Initially, I remained in a parking lot, listening to the storm as it passed through the town while I sat on my phone. I drove through to buy some dinner after an hour, returned to the parking area and continued to wait. After a while, I received the indication that a pickup request has been made. When I clicked on it, it said that they were 25 minutes away from me, and that they needed to be dropped off another 20 minutes away. This typically occurs when there are no other Uber drivers available. Therefore, I'll be the nearest available driver, notwithstanding the distance between us. But this evening I had nothing better to do. After accepting it, I made my way over to them. They had marked the exact spot where he should be picked up. It seemed like an eternity to get there. Perhaps it was just that no one else was on the road, or perhaps it was the storm outside. I even nearly forgot that I was going to pick someone up at times, and it seemed more like I was simply driving aimlessly. The fact that the route it was leading me down ended in the middle of nowhere didn't help either. Since nothing was out there, I'm not even sure if I've ever gone that far in that way. I finally arrived at the precise area on the map after only approximately 35 minutes. It was situated at the intersection of 2 roads, but 2 roads in the middle of absolutely nothing. On either side of me are deserted tree fields. More significantly, no one was present. After verifying on the app that I'd reached the destination, I just sat in my car and took in the surroundings, wondering why in the world they were out here in the middle of a storm. I looked about for a minute before glancing down at my phone once more and sending them a text to find out where they were. At that moment, I noticed someone approaching from behind my car in my side mirror. They unlocked the door and entered. I didn't even know where they originated. I never saw them outside by all the trees or even on the road. The man was however, he was drenched in rain and had a disturbed, almost irate expression. I said, "You order the Uber," and he confirmed he was the proper man by saying my first name. I got behind the wheel. After a short while, something about him felt off. First of all, every time I turned to face my mirror, he was directly in front of me because he was seated in the center of the rear seats. Additionally, he simply exuded a sense of unease as if he was planning something. I was genuinely curious about what brought him out here, and why he was out in the middle of nowhere in the pouring rain. But I also didn't want to stir things up. I decided it would be best to ask as we ventured more into what appeared to be even more desolate areas, in the hopes of receiving a response that would cheer me up. "Hey, So why have you come out here in the first place? I mean, with the storm and all, I remarked as amiably as I could. I glanced at him in the mirror. His gaze flitted from mine. He appeared to be about to say something, but he refrained. He looked very suspicious as he ignored the topic entirely. I didn't feel comfortable about that at all. Even worse, the man appeared to become restless at this point, surveying his surroundings and watching me in the mirror. With the rain streaming down the windshield, you have to keep your eyes on the road. Being unable to see what he was doing behind me was incredibly unsettling. However, he spoke out of the blue. "Leave me here." I started to ask him if he was certain because I was confused, but he interrupted me and repeated himself. "Leave me here." He insisted it. There was obviously a problem and I didn't want to get involved. I followed his instructions and pulled over to the side of the road. He started to walk out the door, but I had to look at my phone, which was in the middle console when the Uber app is open. He hesitated before placing his hand on the door. He looked back at my phone after a moment, then took out his own and looked at it. In that instant, for some reason, I understood exactly what was on his mind. He was reminded that the app included all of his information, including his entire name, and that anything he did, which I was obviously dubious of, would be directly connected to him. The moment I saw his eyes glance at my phone, I knew it, the insight that was beginning to dawn on him. "Well, don't be concerned. On my end, I will cancel the ride." I answered, "It won't charge you," in an attempt to divert his attention and pretend that I had no suspicions. By canceling it, perhaps he would assume that his information will be removed or something. His eyes were still dead and hostile as he gazed at me. He hesitated for a few more seconds before heading out the door. The fog and rain covered him as he ventured out into the storm, in a matter of seconds. Before he had a chance to reconsider, I drove off. I promptly reported this guy's actions to the police despite having no proof that he was involved in any wrongdoing. You simply never understand. Nothing happened for a few days until I received a very regrettable call. That evening, someone vanished. Last seen right off the road where I took him up, close to the woodland. They demanded further details on what occurred that evening, but despite my best efforts, they were unable to locate him or anything else. Unfortunately, by the time any searches could be conducted, the storm had probably washed away any traces or evidence. Neither the man I picked up nor the missing individual were ever located. The last known person to see him was me. I consider myself quite fortunate not to have vanished that evening. This occurred on what I assumed would be a typical workday, but it proved to be very different. It was pouring a lot here because it was early April. I worked both indoors and outdoors. Therefore, when it was pouring, it was always 10 times worse. By the time my shift ended, I was exhausted. Today, I left at 6 o'clock. I spent 30 minutes driving in the rain to my house, which was tucked away in the town's rural area. Oddly, I spotted another set of tracks as I pulled down my driveway, which was now all mud from all the rain, as if someone else had just driven down to my house. I assumed it was a mail truck or something, so I didn't give it much thought until I came home and saw that there was no mail or deliveries at my door. Strange, but it appears from the tracks that they simply made a 3-point turn and drove away after arriving at the residence. Most likely, I simply turned in the incorrect direction. I entered and removed my drenched work clothes before heading to the kitchen to quickly prepare something for dinner. I believed I heard a knock near the front door at around 7:30. Because there was only one knock and it was really quiet, I thought. It was also difficult to hear because of the rain. I left the living room and moved to the opposite side of Thea to inspect the entrance door of the residence. Rain and wind hit me in the face when I opened it. No one was even on my porch, though. After taking a quick glance around, I closed the door to prevent myself from getting wet. It was in any case probably nothing. I returned to the living room where I was scrolling through my phone and watching a show. It was at least an hour before I got up from the couch to go to the bathroom. But as I left the room, I noticed something quite strange. The floor had a mark on it. It appeared to be a small amount of muck or dirt, which was particularly noticeable given the white tile floors. I was aware that I shouldn't wear my shoes into the home, especially since they were damp and muddy from the outside. I was also perplexed as to how I missed it earlier. The TV was on the far wall, so the area was essentially just behind my couch, which faced the opposite direction. Even after grabbing a cloth and cleaning it, I continued to feel really uncomfortable. It appeared as though it would be one of those incidents. There are times when you simply forget about it and go on, because you never truly comprehend it and it has no actual significance. I did consider the possibility that it might have been someone else, but it seemed more like I was frightening myself over nothing. After using the restroom, I returned to the couch, but if I said I simply forgot about it, I would be lying. This seemed strange, as though I had a horrible intuition. I felt like I was being watched, like after watching a scary movie, and I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. With the sofa arranged, the entire bottom floor of the home was now behind me, which made me feel a little uneasy. I had to walk upstairs to my bedroom and switch off the TV because I was so uncomfortable. I could at least be backed up against a wall in my bed there without feeling as though something was behind me. I also had a little TV there. I simply carried on with my evening as usual. After approximately 20 minutes, I felt more at ease in my room and was about to forget about everything when I heard something outside, the door to my bedroom. I had no idea exactly how that sounded. It sounded like a footstep or something striking the wall, but it was only a soft thump. I had no idea, but it was enough to instantly make me uneasy once more. I got out of bed and approached the door. I pressed my ear to it and listened. Nothing was audible to me. I told myself I had to be sure nothing was happening, so I stood there for a long until I worked up the bravery to open the door. After opening the door, I peered down the corridor. It was silent and deserted. I was aware that I would need to look about the house if I desired a quiet night. The extra bedroom, a seldom-used library off space, was the only other room upstairs. The TV downstairs abruptly went on, and I could hear the show I had been watching playing at full power as I started to move over. The fear that suddenly rushed through me made my heart boil in my chest. I bolted downstairs and down the hallway. With the exception of the TV light flickering and flashing on the walls, the entire floor was dark. Uncertain of what to anticipate, I turned the corner into the living room, but it was empty. I approached the TV with caution, looking around the room as I did so, and used the button on the back to switch it off. Was something genuinely happening, or was this just the TV acting strangely? Everything that had transpired that evening seemed to add up. I took a knife from the kitchen and started cleaning every part of the residence. I should have contacted the police immediately, but to be honest, at the time, it didn't seem like having someone there would be very helpful, because they wouldn't arrive for another 10 or 15 minutes. I searched the entire first level, but I never discovered not a single other issue with the house. I then made my way back upstairs in silence, but by now I was certain that all of this was merely a series of strange but pointless occurrences. I moved to the hallway and creaked open the door of the spare room. Everything appeared to be the same, even though I hadn't been in there in a while, until I saw something on the floor near the closet. It was the downstairs TV remote. My face was dripping with blood. I retreated, dashed downstairs, and left the house as I made a police call. When they arrived, they discovered a broken lock on one of the downstairs windows and a few other indications that someone else was inside. Whoever it was most likely came to my house earlier in the day while I was at work, most likely by car, knocking on my door and walking down my driveway to check whether I was home. They most likely drove off after learning I wasn't, only to return and break in. They spent the whole night inside the house, stealthily prowling around. It's possible that they were observing me all night. Even now, the thought still gives me the chills concerning it. They must have taken the TV remote when I walked upstairs to my bedroom. In order to give themselves enough time to sneak out of the house, they evidently switched it on to divert my attention as I approached the spare room where they were hiding. The fact that nothing was taken and there is no clear signs indicated their purpose. Hopefully, I'll still be available to provide you with updates if anything more occurs. Anything more occurs.